I'm sure this is going to anger some people. Uh, Larry Johnson published this way back in December. Um, oh, yeah, what's going on now? Oh, Lord have mercy. Oh, okay, so I have no idea what is going on now. There we go. Well, it just, that's how the devil works. It's hard to do good with the devil's tools. December 13th of 2025. Christian Zionism is a theological and political movement primarily among evangelical Protestants, especially in the United States. It expresses strong support for the modern state of Israel and the Jewish people's right to the land. Its beliefs are rooted in a particular interpretation of the Bible known as I hate this word, dispensational premillennialism, which views biblical prophecies as literal and still applicable today. Christian Zionists, aka CZs, take God's covenants with Abraham and his descendants, the Jewish people, as eternal and unconditional. Christian Zionists rely on two snippets from the Old Testament, a Pentateuch to justify exalting the modern state of Israel. Genesis 12, stop. Genesis 12:3. I will bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you, I will curse. And then also Genesis 17:8. God promises the land of Canaan to you and your descendants after you as an everlasting possession. Now, Christian Zionists support Israel because they believe the Bible literally promises the Jewish people an eternal covenant with the land, that modern Israel fulfills ancient prophecy, and that backing Israel aligns believers with God's end times plan and brings divine blessing. This theological conviction drives both spiritual solidarity and strong political advocacy. But there are several problems with this. Let's start with the polygamous activities of Abraham. The initial promises to Abraham in Genesis, e.g., Genesis 12:1 through 3 and 15, verse 18. They're broad, speaking of blessing Abraham's offspring, or seed, Zerah in Hebrew, without naming a specific child. Abraham had 8 sons total: Ishmael with Hagar, Isaac with Sarah, and 6 others: Zimran, Jokshan, Midian, Ishbak, and Shua, with Keturah in Genesis 25:1 through 6. Again, I'm going to intercede right here with a little something. What's been going on with Isaac and Ishmael, as the Bible pretty much states, part of historical record, will go on since that time. A mule of a man who liked to war. And it's going to go on until end times. So, I mean, why do we get involved? Anyway. Abraham, if he were alive today, would fit in well in some Florida retirement villages that are notorious for rampant sexual activity among their senior citizens. Dude, the stuff that I'm hearing coming out, there's IDF living in Florida, taking shelter there. That's where they go to unwind, I guess. Live a double life. I don't know. I've heard some crazy stuff in chat rooms. But then again, anti-Semitism is rampant, right? Again, you guys need to establish a couple things. And it's Zionist from Jew, and it's Sunni from Shiite. And the sooner you do that, the better. Anywho, why do the Christian Zionists assume that God's promise to Abraham only applies to Isaac and not other 7 offspring? I maintain that is a consequence of author bias. The traditional Jewish and much Christian view attributes the entire Torah, including the first 5 books, Genesis through Deuteronomy, to Moses himself around 13th to the 15th century BC as divine revelation received at Sinai and written down by Moses. There is zero archaeological evidence to support that claim. It's a misprint. But anyway, it says the is zero. I'm guessing it's there. Anyway, I'm tired. It's been a long day. Modern biblical scholarship, the consensus among non traditionalist academics, rejects the full Mosaic authorship. Instead, the documentary hypothesis or variations, purposes of the Pentateuch, I guess that's how you say that, was composed from multiple sources over the centuries and it's listed, which I'll spare you. Final redaction compilation into its current form is generally placed in the Persian period, 5th through 4th centuries BC, during or after the Babylonian exile from 586 to 539 BC. When returning Jewish leaders, Ezra, shaped the text to unify the community. The men who compiled the oral traditions into what came to be known as the Pentateuch represented a narrow branch of Abraham's descendants through Isaac. To understand the men who produced the first 5 books of the Old Testament, we need a bit of history. The Babylonians under Nebuchadnezzar II conquered and deported people from the kingdom of Judah, the southern kingdom, in a series of campaigns between 597 BC and 582 BC. This is known as the Babylonian captivity or exile. The northern kingdom of Israel, comprising of the other 10 tribes, Reuben, Simeon, Dan, Naphtali, I'm not sure how to say that properly, Gad, Asher, Issachar, Zebulun, Ephraim, and Manasseh, had been conquered and deported much earlier by the Assyrians in 722 BC. Those are often called the 10 lost tribes. Yeah. Babylonians did not report the northern 10 tribes. They were already scattered centuries before. Some individuals from northern tribes had migrated south to Judah after the Assyrian conquest, as mentioned in 2 Chronicles. So a small remnant of those tribes may have been among the Babylonian exiles. However, the captivity specifically targeted the people of Judah, meaning the southern kingdom's population dominated by the tribes of Judah, Benjamin, and Levi. Just to be clear, 75% of the descendants of Isaac through Jacob disappeared into the mists of history. Copy that? So scholars representing only 3 of the 12 tribes of Israel were sitting around in Babylon with nothing better to do than compile the stories and oral traditions along with whatever texts had survived the march into Babylon that made them the center of the story of what we now know as Judaism. That is what I mean by author bias. The descendants of Ishmael, who are believed to be what we now call Arabs, did not get a chance to weigh in until about 1,000 years later when the Quran was written. Now here's the kicker. And I'm going to insert my kicker. 2 of them. First, the Ukraine. How is it a primarily, I mean, for the most part, I say primarily, but again, I'm not going to stumble. I'm just going to spit it out, okay? And I'm starting to stumble and lag. But sometimes when you're dealing with stuff, you power through it. And the best way to deal with some stuff is a distraction, like in major pain. Oh, this hurts? Well, let me snap your finger back. Let me snap your finger back. Primarily, Christian Caucasian superpower, the United States, is funding Ukraine, who outlawed Christianity and who even Bill Gates said was one of the most corrupt countries on the planet, the capital of money laundering and human trafficking, among other things. Cocaine ski. Anyhow, and all the biolabs funded by the... Anyway, don't get off your tangent. So how is it, yes, evangelical superpower America is funding Ukraine, who outlawed Christianity, and funded a proxy genocide of over 14,000 Jewish Ukrainians that were more Jew than a lot of the people living in Israel, the middle eastern state of New Jersey. And we just looked the other way. They call it the Russian War of aggression. It's a Russian war of procrastination and interceding in a proxy genocide is what it is. And why is it that Benjamin Netanyahu likes Zelensky so much? I mean, the Azov Nazis that killed these 14,000 Jews over this 8-year period have have swastikas in the back of their head that did such atrocious things to his people. Why does he like Azov? Isn't that strange? Could it be from Latvia and that part of the world? Benjamin Milikowski, Chassidim, mysticism is abhorrent unto the Lord. If you can see into the future, then you know the team you're playing for doesn't win in the end, son. How do you go from selling love seats to telling us all that, I don't know, Iran's a week away from a nuclear bomb for the next 34 years? Anyway, where was I before I really got off the track? Anyway, now here's the kicker. Palestinians share more genetic markers with the original inhabitants of what is known as the State of Israel than European Jews, aka Ashkenazi. Oh, back to the subject, because that's why I did Ukraine first. Because so, and the same thing is true here. How is it that and I'm not saying all Jews believe this, but how is it that the Jewish faith, who envisions Christ Jesus burning in a cauldron of shit in the third temple, is able to try to foment a holy war between two really at opposite ends of the, and some people would say diametrically opposed faiths that, strangely enough, both revere Christ Jesus and Moses? It baffles the mind to me. It's like it's a win-win scenario for them, because they don't have foreskin in either game. We're all Amalek to them. And I'm sure the two people watching work for them. So, anyway. Now here's the kicker. Palestinians share more genetic markers with the original inhabitants of what is now known as the State of Israel than European Jews, aka the Ashkenazi, the ones who bought their way out from underneath Hitler's thumb. Ashkenazi Jews and Palestinians share a substantial genetic heritage rooted in ancient Levant, modern-day Israel-Palestine religion. I also heard that Italian bloodline has a strong link to Ashkenazi. Listen, think about this country being a Heinz 57. Imagine what the planet's like, guys. Anyhow, reflecting common Bronze and Iron Age ancestry from Canaanite, Philistine, and early Israelite population, autosomal DNA studies show also both groups clustering closely with ancient Levanite samples with Y chromosomes and haplotypes indicating 70% similarity between Jewish males, including Ashkenazi, and Palestinian Muslims, suggesting shared patrilineal origins. Palestinians often exhibit higher genetic continuity with Iron Age Levanites, e.g. 60-80% match, while Ashkenazi Jews display a 50% Levanite ancestry, reflecting a common regional foundation disrupted by historical migrations and admixture. About 30% of the current Jewish inhabitants of Israel identify as Ashkenazi. And, they polled a lot of them. You'd be surprised how many are cool with what's going on, from the Euphrates to the Nile garbage. Ashkenazi Jews have 35 to 50%. Southern and Western European admixture from medieval conversions and intermarriages from Italy, Germany, and Eastern Europe are 10 to 20%. That's probably the figure I was talking about. Eastern European contributions diluting their Levantine signal compared to Palestinians who show more Arab Bedouin input, blah, 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 blah. From post-7th century Islamic expansions but retain stronger ties to local ancient populations. Mitochondrial DNA, or maternal lines, in Ashkenazi Jews leans more towards European, greater than 80%, while Palestinians is predominantly Levanite and Arab. Overall, both groups are genetically closer to each other than most other populations, underscoring shared ancient roots despite centuries of separation. Yes, brother against brother. Brother fighting brother from the house of Abraham. Half brothers, whatever. Share the same father. When's the killing going to stop? Biblically, it says it never will until the end. The key point is that the Palestinians have a stronger biological connection to Palestine and Israel than do the Ashkenazi, such as Benjamin Netanyahu. So, Ray Knapp of Hot Springs, Arkansas. Oh shit, you said your name. Who gives a shit? Jesus Christ of Nazareth, Palestinian. The Roman Empire literally called it Palestinian. Jesus was Palestinian, guys. Wake up. Anyhow, the key point is that Palestinians have stronger biological connection to Palestine and Israel than do the Ashkenazis, such as Benjamin Netanyahu. Benjamin Netanyahu, I doubt is even Ashkenazi because he's Polish. Benzion, his father, Benzion Milikowski, literally was an understudy of Jabotinsky, the one who revamped the whole thing, during the Bolshevik Revolution. Yeah, think about that for a minute. There are Mizrahi Jews from the Middle Eastern and North African communities such as Iraq, Yemen, Iran, and Syria, and Palestinians exhibit even closer genetic affinities to Ashkenazi Jews and Palestinians, reflecting their shared origins in ancient Levant without the significant European diaspora admixture seen in Ashkenazi populations. Autosomal DNA studies, blah, 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 show both groups deriving 70 to 90% of their ancestry from Bronze and Iron Age Levantine peoples, Canaanites, Phoenicians, and early Israelites, with Palestinians often displaying the highest continuity, with an 80 to 95% match to ancient samples from sites like Megiddo. Mizrahi Jews cluster tightly with Palestinians on principal component analysis, sharing 70 to 85% Levantine components bolstered by minimal external. So I know this might seem a little deep to you. So I'm gonna just again, short attention span theater. Nobody can ever write a. It's amazing you people even hear a hook to a song anymore. The truth of the matter is that Palestinians and Arabs are genetically Semitic, and Semite basically, by the way, means you speak several languages. Jesus spoke several languages, but Aramaic was, like, that was someone who, anyway, you guys got it all so twisted with your semantics and your anti-Semitics. But anyway, the truth of the matter is that Palestinians and Arabs are genetically Semitic in the sense of deriving substantial ancestry from ancient Levantine Semitic-speaking populations, e.g. Canaanites, with close relatedness to other Semitic groups like Jews. What we are witnessing with the genocide in Gaza is a blood feud among cousins. Exactly. It's not the Hatfields and McCoys, it's the Hatfields and the Tiny Hats. And this shit's been going on forever. What makes Christian Zionist claim about Israel as the fulfillment of prophecy is that only 23% of the Jewish inhabitants of Israel actually are classified as religious, which means they accept the traditional view that Moses wrote in the I'm going to have to figure out how to say that properly, and usually I have to search it on YouTube so it pronounces it and I can listen to it. Pentateuch, Pentateuch, Pentateuch. The other 77% are secular, i.e., they do not accept Old Testament as the divine word of God. In other words, they don't believe that there was a God who promised Abraham that they and they alone would inhabit Judea and Samaria. The facts expose the gross ignorance of Christian Zionists and the politicians who support them with respect to the term anti-Semitic. It's all semantics. If you hate Arabs or Palestinians, you are an anti-Semite. Exactly. Anti-Semitism, despite the furious efforts of Jewish ethno-supremacists, good use of that word, to claim that it is an exclusive label for Jew hatred, is not about being anti-Jewish. It also applies to those who hate Palestinians and Arabs. All right, let the debate begin. I am sure there will be few comments on this topic. I am posting the conversation I had on Wednesday evening with Pascal Ladas of Neutrality Studies. I am also linking to Jimmy Dore's recent conversation with Candace Owens. Oh, wow. You were trying to light a flame under it. Let's see. Here we go. Let's read some comments because you always love the scoffers. This type of ideological idiocy is also very prevalent among evangelicals in Brazil. Oh, I'm sorry. He wasn't casting shade. Good summary. I would add that Premillennial dispensationalism. I have so much trouble with dispensationalism. Didn't exist in the history of Christianity until the early 1800s in Scotland. It didn't come to America until around 1870 in the Conference of Movements. And by the way, yes, the first Zionist Congress was, what was it, Switzerland in 1897. Thank you, Theodore Herzl, burn in hell. Anyhow, didn't come to America until around 1870 after the Civil War. I'm sure it's just a coinky dink in the conference movements and didn't become dominant in American evangelical churches until after World War II. Millennialism in general was considered an uniquely Jewish heresy throughout the Middle Ages and didn't re enter Christianity until after the Reformation through the Puritans. The further back you trace these beliefs to that point of origin, the crazier it all gets. That's a good comment. Anyone trying to make sense of Christian Zionism ought to watch this video. Anybody trying to make sense of Christian Zionism would probably be better served watching paint dry. Excellent analysis as always, yes. How can a modern society survive this nonsense? How can it survive people who chant this 3 times at their most sacred holiday? All vows, all prohibitions, and oaths, and consecrations, and kana, oh boy, kaname, and kinusai, and synonymous terms that we may vow or swear or consecrate or prohibit upon ourselves from previous day of atonement until the day of atonement, and from this day of atonement until the next day of atonement that will come for our benefit. Regarding all of them, we repudiate them. All of them are undone, abandoned, canceled, null, void, not in force, not in effect. Our vows are no longer vows, and our prohibitions are no longer prohibitions. Our oaths are no longer oaths. Yeah, I kind of remember something along those lines. These facts expose the gross ignorance of Christian Zionists and the politicians who support them. And there's a lot of them. With respect to the term anti-Semitic. If you hate Arabs or Palestinians, you're an anti-Semite. Anti-Semitism, despite the furious efforts of Jew. Yeah, he's just repeating his statement. And then he says, thank you, Larry. Here's the truth which the Zionists have worked so hard to deny. Theodor Herzl said he was purposely using Zionism to try to bring people back into the Holy Land because they needed peasants. The upper crust didn't want to work. Anyhow, even to the point of claiming ownership of certain words such as Jewish, Holocaust, genocide, and Semitic, espousing that these words only belong to Zionist usage and that others cannot use these words. Exactly. Only Jews suffered a genocide, for example. The most anti-Semitic people for all to see are Zionist Israelis. Ain't that the truth? The racism and claims of ethnic superiority are so brazen without any shame. In Australia, when a Jew is injured or killed, that is anti-Semitic terrorism. But if a Palestinian or other Muslim is injured or killed, then that is just simply a crime. Well, I don't see any other useful. A lot of links, a lot of other. Like I said, this is kind of a Substack crowd, so usually they're not disruptive or don't troll. It's all a clever ruse, guys. Our Savior's been around 2,000 years. And it sure as hell isn't Christian Zionism that's only been around since 1897 or Benjamin Milikowski. Again, that guy has been trying to bring about the second coming of Christ longer than Christ walked the earth. In interviews with John Wayne Gacy and Son of Sam, they said that they did such horrific things to children as to try to bring about the second coming of Christ. If you were to add up the 64 million reasons since 1973 in Roe versus Wade why I believe God has turned his back on this country, vivisecting children in the womb, I guess so you can't hear him scream these days. How many other things we do? If they're lucky enough to survive that, then we target them through sexual confusion in school and try to diagnose them with problems. And, everybody's got to be in a neat little category. When we talk about labels, we love affixing labels to everybody, though, don't we? I'm not going to get too far off track. And then, of course, they're not lightening that vaccine schedule that has almost 80 injections of neurotoxins by the time they're 18, and then they get to get sucked up into a draft. They can't even buy a beer yet and get sent off to war. American dream. Nonetheless, it's all so convoluted anymore, and I just see everybody itching for a fight. I see so much. Like I said, it's gone. It started out with the stratification. You had layers to it because you guys, you forget when the Tea Party was here, you had a younger generation of rebels, if you would, and an older generation of rebels. And had they got on the same page, it would have been a threat to the system. But they were able to diametrically oppose them, turn one spinoff into Antifa and the other one into MAGA. So, again, nothing good about both wings of this dystopic bird, and who gives it the power to flap so incessantly but the breast meat in the middle, we the sheeple. And I've lost every viewer, which wasn't but two anyway. So yeah, I'm wrapping it up, don't worry. I also feel like somebody's trying to jam my thought process, which usually is the case when I'm trying to land the plane. Just remember, guys, it ain't just every word you say that you're held accountable for. Because words have power. The Lord spoke everything into existence. It's also every word that you deny someone else the freedom of having, the free will of speaking, the free will of being a sovereign human and having that right. You know, you want to talk about constitutional fundamentalism? I'd be happy if we had Magna Carta fundamentalism at this point. The whole world is backsliding. And I'm not just talking about the language, because you can read a letter from the 1800s and see the vocabulary that's used compared to the vocabulary that's used by our president, and see the decline of education over the last 100 years for sure, can't you? Pretty sure the only thing that Trump's daddy ever taught him was how to be a shyster and talk out the back of his neck because he's high off of that methane that exudes from it. And yes, I can talk crap about him all day long because that's generally, even though he's a president, how he regards everyone else. So he deserves the same in return. Especially since I was dumb enough, gullible enough, hoodwinked, bamboozled, and led astray to believing his recycled Ronnie Ray gun, Make America Great Again. How about we make it Goyim again? How about we liberate ourselves from Zionist occupied governance that has their tentacles into everything? How is it? And this has really been striking your nerve, so I'm going to say it one more time because I got my two viewers back and then I lost them, because usually when they're doing that, what they're trying to do is screw up my signal and cut out excerpts of what I'm saying and make it all blurbed and interrupted. They have the same old tricks that they use over and over again, the devil, just like the Jew. The great deceivers, the great impersonators, the ones that always want to cry victim. Mm-hmm. Nonetheless, I'm enjoying your tactics, as usual. What else you got up your sleeve at the moment to disrupt my train of thought? Better start seeing the forest for the trees. You know, he said that you can't separate the wheat from the chaff without uprooting the wheat. And I'd say it's pretty easy to tell the wheat from the chaff because it's standing head and shoulders above the wheat. I mean, tares. I'm so tired, I'm not even saying my terminology right. It's easy to see the wheat from the tares, head and shoulders above it. So, what is blotting out the crop? Bring it all to the storehouse. Your government's not going to care for your people. Your people need to care for your people. You people need to stop reaching out to people that are watching now to an ethereal world that you've never met in the flesh. I've only been on 29 minutes. I've read much longer articles on Zionism. You should reference them. Nonetheless, land the plane, Ray. That's kind of the whole point. Only two people were so fed up they walked out because they realized they couldn't do anything, that they've done all they could do, and that's, I guess, all you can do, right? And the rest were completely content with it, I suppose. And the ironic thing is I heard one of the other mothers say, well, we're never coming back. And it wasn't somebody from the team who had acted like winners and conducted themselves in a manner behooving a student athlete or any athlete for that matter, that it didn't come from that side. I'm never because of that. It was whatever made them blow up, that bad call, they're never going to come back. Well, that kind of says it all. They always show themselves. So I'm sorry things didn't work out for who has been to an away game and got a bad call? Hmm? Probably take the whole damn thing down because I gave my name away. But screw it. I'm just so tired. You people disgust me. My ancestry goes back to the Pembers. I'm going to keep repeating it. I have an 1876 Springfield musket sitting up there, an officer's saber. That the narrative that we liberated the slaves. What a joke that is. Listen to former NAACP chairman H.K. Edgerton, E.D.G. not G.K. Chesterton, H.K. Edgerton, E.D.G. E. Gerton, Gerton, yeah, Edgerton. Interesting man. Went from an NAACP chairman to being an activist for a flag, a 2,000-year-old Christian battle flag. It was modeled after. And a lot of people call it heritage and not hatred. I always talked about the South rising again. Well, you all became feudal debt slaves on that day of emancipation. Just remember that. And we've all been serving under the same whip. But I want to make this point that I wanted to get back to before I had the mental block. How is it that it's so distasteful? And it is reparations. Because no one alive today has lived under the whip. We've all lived under the same whip and the same master. We all deserve reparations for COVID, especially if you had a small business, or whatever. But point being, it was intentional. What COVID did to all the food supply chain, drugs, things like that, trumps down the oil supply chain. It's also to hurt the globe. These aren't wrecking balls for the new world order, for that agenda. They're the catalyst that's going to provide. It's going to make their one world government and their one world religion and their one world currency and their 10 states look like the yellow brick road to you by the time they're done fleecing the entire globe and doing it behind a curtain. But yeah, how is it so appalling? As I lost my two viewers talking about reparations, this is very important. It's a valid comparison. So you don't want to retroactively prorate the 40 acres and a mule for the descendants of slaves that you promised them, you horse blanket giving, indigenous American killing. Anyway, and that's 13.5% of your population. However, it's entirely cool with you to be enslaved to 2.5% of your population. I'm not saying all bad people. No, oy vey. I'm telling you, they're not all bad. I got my hands in my pocket. I'm pulling my hairs out. I'm telling you. Don't be stupid. True Jews know what's up. I've published a lot of stuff. It's just people don't seek the knowledge. Again, this thing's only been around since 1897 that Theodore Herzl has invented. Has it not wreaked enough havoc, taken enough lives, and exacted enough objectives upon everyone else like an edict because of the umbrella that they hide under, that somehow they're the thing? No, his promise was fulfilled in Christ, not you. Isn't real. The three jewels of the Lord's crown. Assyria's handiwork, because he so loved the mountains. Egypt, his people. which I might add, 80% of Egypt's population is black, and that's where they managed to hide Christ away for the other part of his life, and he blended in pretty well. The Bible said he had woolen hair and olive skin. Anyhow, Christ doesn't care about the color of your skin, he cares about the color of your heart, folks. Get over this crap. That's the thing that they were the most eager to point out about that orchestrated patsy thing that happened last night. It seems more like, yeah, I don't know. At least Hollywood can make fiction seem more believable. They just had, oh, it's a teacher. He was teacher of the year in Los Angeles. It's a man of color. What bearing does that have on the subject? None, in my opinion. Standard operating procedure for the Banana Republic, which it isn't, it's a kumquat regime, is 7 things that are detestable unto the Lord. I ain't going to read them off, we'll look them up. Haughty eyes, lying tongue. I'm trying to remember them, as tired as I am. Feet that are quick to rush into evil, hands that are quick to shed innocent blood, a person who spreads lies and controversy within a community. There's plenty of them, and it's just SOP these days. So, I don't know. We are not to know the day or the time, but we are to know the season. And it does seem like it is the season. And for me, I'm looking for things. And when those things come, it will be undeniable. Because those 2 witnesses, I feel like them laying dead in the street every day for 3.5 days. Nobody cares. Know where you're at. They forbid your words. They take away your sovereignty. They want to take everything from you. All your joy. And that's the whole point. Find joy. I know I sound like I complain a lot. You complain a lot. No, that's what I preach to a lot of people about. Being more grateful. Even as messed up as this world is, being more grateful. Every Christian movie I've ever seen is centered around some tragedy that has turned into a brilliant, inspiring testimony of how God takes even the worst thing and works it for good in the end. And he does it through time. And we've all witnessed the quickening since 2020. Again, John is still a Trump advocate for some reason, but I give John Wells the credit for this. Because when I presented it to him, he said the same thing. I said, why is time speeding up? God works all things for good in time. Who's speeding up time? Is God trying to speed up his works? And John nailed it. He said, he never said that those days would be cut short. No, he never said there would be lesser days. He said those days would be cut short. And I was like, the light bulb came on immediately. It's like, wow. You're right. He didn't say there would be lesser days. He did say those days would be cut short. Surely hope no man would have survived. Yeah, how about that? That is interesting. And I was up to 4 viewers at one point, but they went out. I'm sorry I'm not glitzy and interesting enough for everyone, but I'm about to wrap it up. You know, migraine's not toning down, but the birds are starting to sing. The sun won't be coming up, but hey, it's that time of day when the woods come alive. You know, you watch that fish and game forecaster. You know, the whole woods come alive at the same time every day, and you always know because the fish are biting and the deer are moving around, and everything just comes alive. It's because it's on that same frequency almost. Isn't that strange? They're all singing the Lord's praises. First thing they do when they wake up and they see that sun is singing the praises of the Lord. And yes, there was even an earthquake in the Boot Heel of Missouri, and you never know, the Mississippi might flow backwards. It seems like even the rocks are crying out, and I think Kilauea is spewing something, and we're going to have a lot of chance for tornadoes here in Arkansas, so y'all keep abreast of the weather situation. Seems like we're having another resilient high-pressure ridge, another cold front coming in, and the clash. There used to be a hot and a cold side to the storm, let's not talk about the elephant in the sky because there's so many things that they add to the list you can't talk about. Unless, of course, you include them in this, and then there'll be a bunch of disclaimers. Geoengineering, solar radiation management, anti Semitism. You'll have to pick one, guys. Just put the overall conspiracy theory label on it, why don't you? It's been real. It's been fun. It hadn't been real fun, but y'all have a good one. Later.